Ball pythons are the most popular pet snake out there, so there's a plethora of information and none of it is wrong on the internet, right? Well, not really. So today, let's go over everything you need to know to take care of a ball python properly in 2022. My name's Adam, this is Pikachu, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles, stick around. This is a full-grown ball python. Ball pythons are from Africa. Impressive, but not scary. So let's go over how you take care of one. Starting off with category number 1, size. It doesn't matter if you're getting a golden retriever or a crocodile. You need to know how big the thing gets if you want to take care of it properly. Really great news, this is basically as big as they get on average. This is actually a male, and males stay smaller than females most of the time, but this is a 5-foot guy. 5 feet is generally where they top out on average. 4 to 5 feet. Usually smaller males, and then females get a little bit bigger. Now, I have had 3.5 foot males, and I've had almost 6 foot females. So it just totally depends. There are outliers. Just like the average male in the US or Canada is gonna be 5'9" to 5'11", I'm 5'5" and Shaquille O'Neal is 7 foot. There's gonna be outliers, and the same goes with ball pythons. And in terms of weight, around 5 pounds or less usually. You can get really big specimens, but they're gonna be around 2,000 grams, and males probably a little bit less than that even. Category number 2, enclosure. Not only size, but how you furnish it. But let's start with size first. This is my biggest gripe with what we're still doing incorrectly as a whole. I used to see all the time, oh, keep ball pythons, adult males or females, in 40-gallon enclosures. Now this is ridiculous, right? This doesn't make any sense. It's a 5-foot snake and you want to keep it in, like, it just doesn't make sense. 75 gallons is also too small. I would say bare minimum 4x2x2. So 120 gallons. I get a lot of flack for this. I do not care. I like to give my ball pythons a place to move. I want to see them be able to use their natural abilities to move around, because although they do live in termite mounds in the wild, you live in an apartment. Do you stay in the apartment all day? No, you leave all the time, every day. Just like ball pythons leave termite mounds. So if we want to do something similar to their environment, give them a tight space in the enclosure, and then give them an opportunity to leave that tight space and wander around like they do in the wild. Now you can't keep them in a plain box 4x2x2, right? So what I would recommend is start with substrate. Let's start from the ground up, pretty darn simple. I use a coconut core and a coconut chip. That's what I like to use. It holds humidity really well. We'll get into why that's important in the next category, but it's just very simple. You buy a brick of this stuff, and for a 4x2x2 enclosure, you can give them a really deep layer or even fill 2 entire enclosures with 1 brick. And these bricks usually cost between $10 and $25, depending on where you are in the world. I personally buy them at hardware stores as long as they're organic, or you can buy them at a reptile store. It doesn't really matter. After that, you need some necessities. You need a water bowl. I always give them something big enough to soak in. They're gonna use this generally when they're about to shed. They don't spend a lot of time in their water bowls, but I like to give all my snakes an opportunity to soak in a water bowl if they choose to. For things like this, you can use a dishwash pan that you get at the dollar store for $2. It's really up to you. Or use a really cool Universal Rocks one that's gonna cost you dozens of dollars. It doesn't matter. If it holds water and you can clean it, then you're A-okay. And if you want the Universal Rocks one, I'll leave a link below if you're in Canada. We finally have that available to us. Universal Rocks is awesome. We talked about hides a little bit, that's the next thing. So you can use, again, the exact same water receptacle, the dish pan that you buy at the dollar store, flip it over. I've done that a bunch of times. You can use cork tubes. I like to use those. They're more expensive, but they look more natural. Universal Rocks makes hides also. Order it from those guys, or go to the reptile store and they sell things that are made for this purpose, just more expensive. The next thing that's overlooked a lot is enrichment. So 2 main things here. Although they're not an arboreal snake, I mean, technically they're a terrestrial snake, although oftentimes, especially with males, you will see them use climbing opportunities if given. I've seen Pikachu climbing things, I've seen other snakes that I have climbing things, and then some of my ball pythons don't climb at all. I just give them the opportunity in case they want to use it. But also important is clutter, a way for them to get from one hide to the other. You want to hide on the cool side and the warm side. Oh, by the way, there's a whole video of how to set up an enclosure on a budget. There you go. But the main thing is here, if you don't give them the opportunity to feel like they are hidden, feel like they aren't seen by predators or you or whatever on their way from one hide to the other, they're going to feel stressed out. And that's when people are going to say, oh, well, my ball python just stays in one hide all day and I never see it out. It's because you're doing it wrong. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a time and a place for tubs and smaller enclosures. I've never really had snakes that don't accustom or acclimate, is the better word, to a larger enclosure. I've always just had it work for me, and I've had literally dozens of ball pythons, but some people do swear by keeping them in smaller tubs. I would just recommend doing your best to get them in bigger enclosures because it's more fun for you and it's probably better for the animal too. Next, heat, humidity, and lighting. This one's actually pretty simple. Considering it's a snake from Africa, you'd think it needs to be super duper hot, but it doesn't. I mean, the humidity is something to take into account for. Okay, let's just go in order here. You want a thermal gradient as always. So on the cool end, you want it in the mid 70s, on the warm end, mid 80s, and then you want a basking spot or a hot spot, and I always have that right around 90. Now, keep in mind, this is a care guide. I say this all the time. So if I tell you, make sure your hot spot is between 88 and 92, and your hot spot is 93, your snake doesn't spontaneously combust. I promise. Let's suppose that your cool end, instead of being 75, is 72, okay? And your warm end is exactly 82. Well, you have all that room in the middle if you have a big enough enclosure, another reason why bigger enclosures are better, for that snake to pick the right type of temperature, because it's going to be a gradient. It's not going to be 72, 82. It's going to be a gradient all the way along. Now, to accomplish this, I use radiant heat panels. I think they're easy. They're a little bit expensive to buy at the beginning, but they're water resistant. They almost never fail. They're not a fire hazard. They're not going to burn your animal. I just think they're perfect. They're easy to mount to the top, just easy. All the way around, it's easy, and in my opinion, the perfect way to heat an enclosure. However, if you want to use heat tape on the bottom to create a hotspot, I do this often too, or if you want to use a halogen light that is protected with a light protector so the snake can't touch it and burn itself, with a rock underneath to catch that heat, you can do that too. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. Do more research than watching Mr. Clean lookalike talk to you on a video, but it is really, really simple. Now, in terms of humidity, a lot of people do this wrong. They'll do it way too low. Here's what I recommend, and here's what's worked for me over the last several years, over 10 years of keeping this species. 55 on the low end to about 75 on the high end. Now, this is going to fluctuate. At night, when the lights go out or your heat source goes off or lowers, generally the humidity is going to spike. So if you find that, oh, it's 3 a.m. and it's 90% humidity, what am I gonna do? Well, check during the day. It's probably gonna be 60% or something like that. So you're gonna have spikes and you're gonna have dips. So if your humidity goes down to 40% for 2 days, as long as it's not when it's shedding, that'd be bad, then you're fine. If you change the substrate and it's moist because you just soaked it, that's how you do this with the bricks of substrate and you soak them in water, and let's suppose for 2 or 3 days it's 100% humidity, you're fine. As long as it averages out around 55 to 70, 75% humidity. And of course, I always recommend that you give them places that it's more humid if they want to retreat to them. So in the wild, they would go to things like termite mounds. In my enclosures, I have the hides full of substrate that holds humidity really well, sphagnum moss and things like that. So if I put a hygrometer in the middle of the enclosure, it'll be like 60% humidity, something like that. But inside those hides, it's gonna be 90% or better. So they can choose. Do they wanna be a little bit drier? Do they wanna be a little bit more moist?
Speaking moistly. Speaking moistly.
Humid, it's up to you, it's up to them really, but it's up to you to make sure they have the option for it to be up to them. I'm a poet. Now, lighting is really simple. If this was, well, I guess I have done 2 other videos like this. 2019 was the newest one. Let's just get right into it. And I said not to use UVB. I think that it's up to you. I have tried using UVB with basically every species I own now, including ball pythons. I haven't really noticed a difference. I don't think ball pythons, or at least in my experience, with my experimentation, it hasn't made much of a difference. But a lot of people swear by it, and if you give them a low level, say a 2.0, like a shade dweller type of UVB, then I think you're okay. I don't think it's a problem, as long as they have a way to get out of it, which you're gonna do. because you want the lights to be on 12 hours or 12 hours or 16 hours, 8 hours, whatever. Just give them a photo cycle that's similar to what it is outside for you, or exactly 12-12, but they need a place to get out of the light anyway. So whether it's an incandescent, a fluorescent, a UVB, it doesn't matter. However you light the enclosure, what you need to do to give them a photo period, you just gotta give them a place to get out of that. And if you use UVB, it's the exact same. They can choose to be in the UVB or out of it, but make sure it's turned off at night. I get a lot of questions about this. Turn the lights off at night. It needs to be dark at night, like it would be in the wild. A very simple category, diet. They eat rodents. In captivity, the best bet for you, the easiest, the cheapest, the best for the animal is feeding rats. I feed medium-sized or large-sized rats depending on the size of my snakes. So this banana ball python here is gonna eat a medium. Bigger animals like Pikachu and some of my bigger females are gonna eat large-sized rats. Basically, the width of the rat should be about the same width of the snake. That's how you know. I feed the smaller animals that eat smaller meals about every 7 days, and then the larger animals every 10 to 14, depending on the size of the animal and the prey. Don't overthink it. Weigh your animal. Weigh it today, and then weigh it next week, and a month later, and 2 months later, and 3 months later. Is it maintaining a healthy weight? If the answer is yes, you're feeding it correctly. If it's dropping weight too fast, or if it's gaining weight too fast, we'll dial back the food or ramp up the food. This is really common sense stuff, and I know that people get all bent out of shape. Oh, what do I do? How many crickets do I feed my bearded dragon per day? Do I feed it on midnight? What about the summer solstice? Like, don't think about it like that. Do not overthink it. This is supposed to be fun. Keeping animals is fun. So don't overthink it. Don't get stressed out. Just use a little bit of common sense. A really important category, behavior. Because what's the point of having an animal if you don't like the way it acts? If you're an active person, you get a golden retriever. If you're a couch potato, you get an American bulldog, whatever, right? And the same thing goes with snakes. If you want an animal that's going to be kind of a good pet to watch a movie with, an animal that's not going to move and groove, that's going to kind of sit there most of the time and be pretty inactive, get yourself a ball python. On average, that's how ball pythons act. If you want an animal that's going to be kind of crazy and zooming around and moving crazy, get like a small colubrid, something like that. And ball pythons, they're not going to really move around all that much. They're going to be kind of, well, they're mostly docile, right? They're on average not very defensive. So an animal that if you don't like getting bit by snakes, this is a good one to start out with, knock on wood. And of course, their eating is something that we should touch on. A snake that's going to spend most of the time on the ground. It's not going to move around a lot. It's not going to move fast. It's going to be pretty placid. The problem is, I think the biggest problem in my opinion, is if you only have one snake, you might be wasting rats, because these guys like to stop eating all the time for no reason. Well, I shouldn't even say all the time, it's individual by individual basis. This is Pikachu, and every year for 5 months, he goes off food. It's like clockwork, he just does. Now this is something that happens in the wild, so it's a natural behavior. I've got other ball pythons that it doesn't matter what day it is, your birthday, my birthday, Jesus' birthday, don't matter, they're gonna eat every single time. And then I've got other ones that are super finicky and they just randomly stop eating. This is a ball python thing. This happens all the time. This isn't something to be concerned about. If your python starts to lose weight rapidly, that's different. Go to a vet. But if you have a ball python that, say, stops eating for 5 or 6 months, but only lost 4 grams, 10 grams, and it's a full-size python, don't worry about it. You're fine. Now, what do you do with the rats? You throw them out or feed them to something else. If you have a collection like mine and you have a ball python that doesn't eat, feed that rat that it didn't eat overnight to your boa or a different ball python or whatever. If you have no other animals, well, you gotta throw it out. You can't refreeze it. That's dangerous. I recommend feeding frozen thawed. A frozen thawed rodent can't hurt your snake, and they're easy and they're convenient. You pull it out of the freezer, you stick it in some warm water for a couple hours, that's it. You give it to your snake. Finally, price, availability, and morphs. Now, if you've done any research on ball pythons or you've looked at classified ads, you know they're really easy to find. Whether you want a normal looking snake, something a little bit crazier like a banana, or something kind of standard but very unique looking, like an albino, one of my favorites, Pikachu, they're easy to find. You'll find them basically everywhere, every reptile shop, pet stores even. I recommend finding a breeder or a local pet store, right, if you can, but you'll have no problem finding them. In terms of price, if you want a normal, a lot of people give babies away because breeders, let's face it, want the cool stuff. I've literally been given baby normals for free $5, $10. These are real prices. I'm not making these up, that I've actually had ball pythons for. If you want something kind of more crazy, like, I don't know, even an albino, maybe a couple $100, banana, couple $100, but there's some that go all the way up to the thousands of dollars. It just depends what you want. But even nowadays, something like a pied, you can find for like $300 or $400, where those animals used to be $25,000. No joke. And in terms of morphs, well, everything under the sun. You want a white one, you want a yellow one, you want a normal looking one, there's basically every color under the rainbow for you. And that's it. That's how you take care of a ball python. What do you think? Is there something that I missed? Is there some advice you'd like to give in the comment section? Let me know. And what do you want to see next week? I take all the comment ideas, all the ideas out of the comment section. Please hit like and subscribe if you don't mind. I'd really appreciate it. And as always, a special thanks to the Patreon supporters. You guys are amazing. You get videos early, extra videos, you guys get discounts on the merch, you know about projects and trips that are coming up that I don't talk about publicly. And for as little as $1 a month, you can be part of the Patreon club too. And that's it. Because I do videos twice a week, that means that I'll see you in the next one.